Good morning once again from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones with another update on the potential winter weather, which is pretty much exclusively going to be freezing rain. We're not looking at any snow or really any appreciable sleet to speak of with this event this weekend, but we are still looking at the potential for some freezing rain across the region as we go through Saturday evening into Sunday morning. Now, the good news for those of us kind of along the I-10 corridor, so here in Lake Charles, over towards Beaumont, Lafayette, New Iberia, the probabilities of seeing any kind of significant amounts of freezing rain continues to come down for those areas. So that's certainly some good news. It's certainly possible that those areas may not see any freezing rain at all. And therefore, you wouldn't have any significant impacts that we've been talking about the last couple of days. Unfortunately, the downside is for those of you across parts of central Louisiana, interior parts of southeast Texas, so over towards Tyler, Jasper, and Newton counties in southeast Texas, we are still looking at the potential for some significant ice accumulation with this event Saturday night going into Sunday morning. We're going to talk about all of that as well as the very cold temperatures that are going to come in regardless of the ice accumulation. It is going to be very cold with some long duration freezes expected beginning as early as Saturday night, but continuing each night really through the rest of the upcoming week. So we'll be looking at long duration freezing temperatures all the way through at least next Thursday. And then there's actually been a few computer models hinting at some winter weather again next weekend. We're not going to talk too much about that at this point, but just something to bear in mind as a low-end outside possibility. So we're going to talk about all that here over the next little while. As always, this is a live interactive briefing, so if you have any questions as we go through our briefing here, feel free to post them in our comments section, and I'll be happy to answer them just as soon as we wrap up our briefing. I'll go ahead and throw the comments up there on the screen there, just so you can keep an eye on them as we go through our briefing here. And let's go ahead and jump into it. So again, we're still looking at the potential for some freezing rain. This is mainly going to be Saturday night into Sunday. There was some early indications that we could have seen some freezing rain as early as Saturday morning or Saturday midday, but that does not look to be the case anymore. Those coldest temperatures, those sub-freezing temperatures that you need for the freezing rain isn't going to get into the area until sometime Saturday evening. So essentially from right around sunset or just before sunset Saturday evening through Sunday morning is kind of the time frame that we're looking at for the potential freezing rain and ice accumulation. Now, as we talked about before, it looks like, generally speaking, the highest risk for freezing rain and ice accumulation is going to be roughly along and north of the Highway 190 corridor. We'll talk about that in a little more detail in just a second. But the probabilities are decreasing for freezing rain, essentially south of the 190 corridor all the way to the coast. So that's certainly some good news. We do still have a winter storm watch in effect. Let me go ahead and make this full screen so you can take a little bit closer look at it here. We are looking at this winter storm watch for the possibility of freezing rain. This extends all the way down to the I-10 corridor because there is still a chance that we could see some freezing rain in the Lake Charles area. We're just not expecting significant amounts of accumulation, but we're going to keep that up for the time being out of an abundance of caution. There is the possibility, though, that if those probabilities continue to fall, that watch may actually be trimmed back somewhat here, either later on today or tomorrow. Go forward. What's not going to change is the cold weather advisory that we currently have in effect. This is for Saturday evening until noon on Sunday, and that's because of the fact that once those freezing temperatures roll in, they're going to pretty much stay in place for a good part of the day. We may get above freezing for a few hours Sunday afternoon, but certainly by the time we get closer to sunset, we'll be dropping back below freezing very quickly. So we're going to be looking at durations or the amount of time spent below freezing anywhere from 12 to 20 hours each day going forward here. And then we're going to be looking at some gusty winds behind that cold front as well that could potentially drop those wind chill values, those feels-like temperatures, down into the single digits in some locations. So this is going to be an extremely cold air mass, regardless of whether we see actual freezing rain out of it or not. Now, here's the latest look at our forecast ice accumulation totals. You can see we're not officially calling for any appreciable accumulation along the I-10 corridor. So anywhere from Lake Charles over towards Lafayette, Beaumont. I know a lot of our population around this area live in those three cities. That is certainly some good news for you. But areas further to the north, we are still looking at some significant potential for ice accumulation across central Louisiana, and especially as you get up towards North Louisiana, these numbers are even higher. But anywhere between about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation is expected up towards the Alexandria area. And once you get over about 1/10 of an inch, that's when we start to see the significant impacts from ice accumulation, where we start seeing power outages. We start seeing roads being closed due to icing, the black ice developing on roadways. So we are expecting those risks across parts of central Louisiana. Again, less likely essentially along and south of the Highway 190 corridor. But north of that, we are going to be looking at the potential for all of the impacts of a major winter weather ice storm. Again, as far as timing goes, we're going to be looking at it beginning possibly late afternoon, sometime in the between about the 4 and 6 o'clock Saturday afternoon into early Saturday evening, and continuing through Sunday morning before all of the moisture that's producing the precipitation gets out of here. The temperatures are going to be well below freezing, so certainly cold enough, but the precipitation will come to an end, so that'll put an end to our ice risk. At least the ice that's falling out of the sky. Now, the ice that has already formed on the ground will have the potential to stick around for a couple of days because, again, as we talked about just a minute ago, we're not expecting temperatures to get above freezing for very long, so that any ice that accumulates is going to remain frozen and in place until we can get several hours above freezing, and that'll give that ice an opportunity to finally die off. The good news is, or melt off. The good news is, regarding those who have school and work on Mondays that are off the weekend, is that we'll know by Sunday late morning into early Sunday afternoon what roads are closed, and if they are, they're probably going to remain closed into Monday morning. So it's not going to be a decision regarding whether to close schools, whether to close work, what roads can I get in and out of. You're going to have an opportunity to be aware of that before we get to Monday morning. You'll know it by Sunday, because if it's still frozen up Sunday afternoon, it's going to remain frozen through probably at least noon on Monday. This is a look at our forecast ice accumulation totals, just kind of in a different way as it relates to timing. And I'll get my big head out of the way here so you can take a little bit closer look at it. The left-hand side are our Southeast Texas counties and our Southeast Texas cities, I should say. And the right-hand side are Louisiana cities. This is how much ice we're expecting to accumulate over any given time. So this essentially begins late Saturday evening, as we mentioned, across central Louisiana as early as about 6 p.m. Saturday evening, and then continuing during the overnight hours into Sunday morning. So we're really starting to see some accumulations across areas that are going to see it. You're going to start seeing it by midnight Sunday morning, continuing through about noon or perhaps a couple of hours afternoon on Sunday before the precipitation should all be out of here. The latest time on here is 6 p.m. Sunday evening, but it'll probably be out of here before that. We're probably looking at closer to maybe 2 or 3 in the afternoon when all of the activity will get out of here. So that kind of gives you an idea as far as more specific timing and how much ice accumulation we can expect during those times. The majority of the ice accumulation is going to occur during the pre-dawn hours early Sunday morning. So when you wake up Sunday morning, you may already be dealing with some road hazards, possible power outages by that point. This is a look at our precipitation chances going. This actually, I thought I updated this. This might have been the wrong graphic here because this is still showing Wednesday. But the bottom line is still the same. We're looking at generally very high rain chances. Saturday kind of along and ahead of that front. We're not going to be looking at much in the way of rain chances today. We could see a couple of spotty showers out there, but nothing compared to all of the rain that we saw across the region yesterday. So we are going to get a little bit of a break, but there is going to be some liquid precipitation that's going to develop ahead of this front Friday afternoon into Friday evening. The front then rolls through Friday night, and but the freezing temperatures are not actually going to reach the region or really drop below freezing until sometime Saturday night. So while we are looking at pretty high rain chances through the day on Saturday, that is mainly going to be liquid. Now, the downside to that is that any liquid precipitation that falls during the day on Saturday, if it pools on area roadways and just kind of sits there, once that sub-freezing temperature rolls in Saturday night into Sunday morning, that's going to freeze. And so it may not even be freezing rain that necessarily causes road issues, but rather the liquid water that falls during the day, and then those cold temperatures blow in and freeze that liquid water on the roads during the night. So you won't necessarily have to even see freezing rain to potentially get some road hazards out of this as that very cold air mass moves in Sunday evening into Sunday night. Same thing for Southeast Texas. We're looking at very high rain chances during the day Saturday, and then that precipitation, liquid precipitation, will switch over to potential freezing rain, especially away from the coastline and north of Highway 190 as we get into Saturday night and Sunday morning. So this is a look at our latest probabilities of how much potential ice we could see. I showed you the actual numbers there. That's what we call the deterministic forecast. That's where we give you a specific number. But a much better way to kind of think about this in terms of what are the chances of you seeing significant impacts are to look at the probability. So what we're looking at here is the probability of any amount of ice accumulation. And you can see up north of Highway 190 along the across central Louisiana, we're looking at anywhere between about a 50 to 70% chance of seeing some amount of ice accumulation. So it's more likely than not that you will see some freezing rain and ice accumulation up that way. Further to the south, you can see most of the I-10 corridor, though, only in about a 20 to maybe 40% chance as you get into southern Beauregard Parish, southern Allen, southern Evangeline. You're kind of in that 40% chance range. But the probabilities come down fairly substantially as you get closer to the coastline. And then right along the immediate coast, the overall probabilities are generally less than 20%. So that's for any amount of accumulation. Now, when we start to talk about accumulation, enough accumulation to start seeing some impacts, some road closures, power outages, that usually starts to occur after about a 1/10 of an inch. So here are the probabilities of seeing at least a 1/10 of an inch. You can see again the highest probabilities across central Louisiana along the north of Highway 190, anywhere between about a 40 to 50% chance. Further to the south, along the I-10 corridor, only about a 10 to 20% chance of seeing at least a 1/10 of an inch of ice. So you can kind of correlate that in thinking that there's about a 10 to 20% chance of seeing road closures, a 10 to 20% chance of seeing power outages across that area. So it's not zero, but the probabilities are very low, and they've been continuing to decrease. They decreased a little bit yesterday. They decreased a little bit further today for areas closer to the coastline. They've remained about the same, though, for central Louisiana, Tyler County, Jasper, and Newton counties as well. This is the probability of seeing greater than a 1/4 of an inch. This is usually when we start to see more widespread power outages and road closures. You can see we're looking at about a 20 to 40% chance across central Louisiana. And then along the I-10 corridor, a very low probability. We're looking at generally 5 to 10% at most. In fact, you can see a lot of the 0s to 3s along and south of I-10 there. So very low probabilities that we're going to see significant accumulation along the I-10 corridor or south, and roughly a little less likely than not for this amount of precipitation across central Louisiana. Now, the probability of seeing a 1/2 inch of accumulation, this would be a pretty catastrophic situation. At this point, you're pretty much looking at all roads. This, though, and we're looking at generally only about a 5 to perhaps up to 20% chance across parts of central Louisiana for up to a 1/2 inch of accumulation. So that's not very likely at this point. And then further to the south, we're looking at virtually a 0% chance of seeing of ice accumulations of that amount. Now, regardless of how much ice we wind up seeing, we are going to be looking at some very, very cold temperatures, as we talked about at the top here, over the next few days. And these temperatures are going to be very close to record breaking. This time last year, where we're dealing with that snow event, there were some pretty extremely cold temperatures those days as well. But these are going to be offset by a couple of days. So these record lows are only in the upper teens to lower 20s. You can see the record lows for Beaumont, 22 and 23 for Monday and Tuesday, and we're forecasting low temperatures of 20 to 23. So we're going to be right there at those record lows. For Beaumont, Lake Charles, our forecast is for 21 to 22, and our record lows are 22 and 18. So we're going to be right there near those record lows. Same thing for Alexandria. We're looking at 13 to 16. Those record lows are 10 to 11. So it's not out of the realm of possibility we could see a record there, although those record lows are a little bit lower. And then New Iberia, which has they have the shortest period of record. So their record lows are a little bit higher, but our forecast lows are right around 23, and we're looking at those records between 22 and 25. So we are near those record lows for this event, and we're probably going to be near those record lows pretty much every day this week, at least through Thursday. Friday might be a little bit warmer, although we're still going to see at least a light freeze as late as this Friday. So taking a look at those forecast temperatures kind of going through the next several days, you can see the coldest temperatures are going to be Sunday night into Monday morning, and then again Monday night into Tuesday morning, where we're going to be looking at temperatures dropping back into the teens across a large part of central Louisiana. and interior parts of southeast Texas. And then when we add in those winds, because it is going to get quite breezy behind that cold front as we go into Saturday and Sunday, you can see with those wind gusts of 15 to 20 miles an hour. Saturday into Sunday, they will come down, it looks like, Monday afternoon and through the rest of the week. But Saturday and Sunday, we are going to be looking at those gusty winds. And once we add those in, we're looking at those wind chill, those feels-like temperatures down in the single digits, especially Sunday night into Monday morning, where the combination of the very cold air and also the wind gusts to 20 miles per hour are going to kind of line up with one another. So those single-digit temperatures are certainly going to be brutally cold. They're going to be dangerously cold for anyone who's caught outside unequipped or improperly clothed for that kind of environment. It is survivable if you have the right layered clothing and jackets and parkas and all that. North do it all the time. But it is dangerous to be improperly clothed just in, shorts and a t-shirt like we're familiar with most of the year around here. That's not going to cut it with these kind of temperatures. For southeast, more cities south of Highway 190, just kind of showing the same thing. We're looking at temperatures in the lower 20s Sunday night into Monday, and then again Monday night into Tuesday. We're going to be looking at those same overall wind gusts right in the 15 to 20 mile an hour range for the same period. And then when we add those in, we're looking at, again, single-digit potential wind chills all the way down to the coast Sunday night into Monday, and again, Monday night into Tuesday. For southeast Texas, pretty much the same story. Again, you're going to be looking at regular temperatures or actual temperatures in the upper teens to lower 20s, both Sunday night and Monday, as well as Monday night and Tuesday. And then, again, you add those 15 to 20 mile per hour wind gusts on top of that, and we're looking at those wind chill values, again, back into the single digits for southeast Texas as well. Now, as it relates to the potential for pipe freezing, the wind chill value plays no appreciable role in that. The wind chill is just how the air temperature feels on human skin. So just because your wind chill values are in the single digits doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to make it more likely or your pipes are going to have the potential to freeze more rapidly. That's just going to be simply a matter of, is the temperature above or below freezing? So that's what we need to determine or need to look at to determine what kind of pipe freezing situation we're going to have. Generally, anything more than about 4 hours below freezing is going to be enough to begin to cause pipes to freeze. So what we've got here is the duration, the amount of time that we're expected to be below freezing during the overnight hours and during the day over the next few days. So starting noon Saturday to noon Sunday, we're going to have the cold front roll through late Friday night into early Saturday morning, but the sub-freezing air isn't going to get into the area until sometime during kind of the late afternoon into early evening Saturday. So the overall amount of time spent below freezing is going to be relatively low, although as you can see across central Louisiana and up towards Tyler, Jasper, and Newton counties, we're still looking at anywhere between 8 to 10 hours below freezing. So for those of you in central Louisiana, southeast Texas, in the three counties I just mentioned, even Hardin County is going to be looking at several hours below freezing. Saturday night into Sunday is going to be the first night you're going to have to be dealing with potential pipe busting weather. For those of us south of there, perhaps not Saturday night into Sunday, but as we get into Sunday through Monday, you can see those numbers ramp way up. So anywhere from 13 to as many as 22, 24 hours either, which means essentially the entire period will be below freezing. This is pipe busting weather to the max. So precautions are definitely going to need to be taken. Insulate pipes, run the water as necessary as long as you're able to do so. And this is going to be pretty much all day Sunday through just about all day Monday. Now, going through noon on Monday to noon on Tuesday, you can see those numbers are largely the same. We're looking at anywhere between about 8 to 20 hours below freezing away from the immediate coastline. And even those of you right on the immediate coastline down in Cameron Parish, still looking at 8+ hours of below freezing temperatures. So precautions continuing to need to be taken. We're still running water at this point. We're going to have to continue to do it at least through Tuesday afternoon. Now, as you can see here, it looks like noon Tuesday, we're going to actually get above freezing for a while across most of the area, with the possible exception of parts of central Louisiana, which could potentially still see a long duration freeze Tuesday night into Wednesday. And then Wednesday night into Thursday, we are going to still see a light freeze, but it's not going to be for nearly as long. So essentially what we're going to be looking at is a long duration freeze of just about, if not entirely all day, at least through Wednesday with this system. Now let's talk quickly about the impacts of freezing rain, and this is not going to affect everyone. Again, we talked about essentially generally south of Highway 190, we're not going to be looking at significant ice accumulations. But for those of you watching from central Louisiana or Tyler, Jasper, Newton counties, this is particularly for you more so than anybody else. What are the potential impacts for freezing rain? So layers of ice on roadways leading to loss of traction. Roads may become impassable and subject to close. I think we're all pretty much well aware of that as a possibility. Ice accumulation on power lines, increasing the weight, causing them to come crumbling down and causing potentially extensive power outages. That is going to be an issue across central Louisiana should this forecast verify. Tree branches, also the weight of the ice accumulating on tree branches could cause them to collapse. And they're going to collapse on potentially whatever's underneath them. Could be a vehicle, trampoline, whatever you happen to have underneath a tree branch will have the potential to be damaged by those crumbling tree branches. And then a glaze of ice potentially developing on vehicle windshields if they're left outside and exposed. Windshields, windows, and the ice can also potentially ice your doors shut. And it's not a good idea to necessarily pour warm water to melt that ice, because while it will melt the ice, it will also potentially cause your windshield to crack because of the rapid change in temperature. So you generally do not want to pour water on your windshield to get rid of that ice. So what you want to try to do is you can either put a tarp over the vehicle, bring the vehicle in a garage, put it under a carport, give it some kind of shelter if you can. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait till that ice melts off in order to use your vehicle again. So what can you do to prepare in the meantime? Especially across central Louisiana, but this is good advice pretty much across the entire area, given the potential for the very cold air we're going to be seeing over the next several days. Have an alternative source of keeping warm in the event of power outages. Fireplaces, generators, layered clothes, and blankets are all good ideas. As we talked about yesterday quite a bit, do not bring a generator inside. Do not run a generator inside. Carbon monoxide is produced anytime gas is burned, just like the exhaust coming out of your vehicle, and that is toxic and deadly. It displaces the oxygen when you're breathing that in, and it will cause you to essentially pass out, and you just won't wake up again. We've had, unfortunately, several fatalities related to generators being run inside after major catastrophes like Hurricane Laura, for example. We had more deaths related to people running generators inside than we did from the actual hurricane itself. So generators, good idea. Do not bring them inside. Same thing with gas grills. They do provide a source of warmth and cooking. Do not bring them inside. Someone asked me the other day about a kerosene lamp. Kerosene is essentially, the same combustible material as gasoline and propane. It's the same in the same vein there. It produces carbon monoxide. Don't use it inside. Be prepared to be unable to travel for as long as 2 days, because once that ice freezes to the roads, it is going to stick around at least until we get several hours of above freezing temperatures. So have bottled water on hand, some snacks, some food items that you don't need to prepare a whole lot in order to eat, because if you're out of electricity, you may not have the opportunity to prepare food. So prepackaged snacks are a good idea to potentially be stuck in your house for a couple of days. Non-electronic sources of entertainment for children, board games are a good idea, card games and the such, just in case cell phones die or iPads die and you can't get those charged up. That'll hopefully keep them from driving you nuts while you're stuck in your house for a couple of days, if that becomes necessary. And then, of course, as we talked about a minute ago, move vehicles and any other breakable objects from underneath trees, because tree branches are subject to collapsing under the weight of all the ice if we do get a significant amount of ice. So that's what we have here this morning from you from the National Weather Service. As always, we're going to answer your questions here over the next few minutes. So if you do have a question, feel free to post them in the comment section there. And if I do miss your question for any reason, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook. We're also on X. We're also on Instagram. You can message us that way. You can also email me directly. My email is on the bottom right hand of your screen there. I'll turn the comments off so you can see it. You can also give us a call here at our office. It's area code 337-477-5285. That number is open or available 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, and we'll be happy to answer your questions that way. So let me go ahead and jump into it here and see if we do have any questions. And let's see here. If you posted your question towards the beginning of the briefing, I may not be able to see it, so throw it back in there again if you're still with me, and I'll be happy to answer it. Brandon asked, do you know how much for Owensboro yet? I'm not even sure where Owensboro is, but I have a feeling that's not in the area we cover, so I can't really give you a reliable answer. I think if it was in our area, I would probably recognize that that city name. So whatever your local forecast office is, that's who you want to ask for that information. Alan asked, what about New Iberia in Louisiana? Right now, the probabilities of seeing any amount of ice in New Iberia is extremely low. We're talking probably less than 10% at this point. So we're not expecting a significant concern for ice for the New Iberia area, but you will be looking at that long duration cold. So kind of keep that in mind. Alexa says, if this power goes out, we have king cake to eat on. King cake is a good example of, it's not a prepackaged food item, but an item that doesn't require a lot of preparation. So yes, king cake for everybody. That would be a good thing to snack on in the event that you do lose power. Robert says, are you going to show temps and when they drop? Hopefully you saw that there when I did, because I did show them. We did the breakdown here just a little while ago. If not, you can always rewind and take a look at that. I did show that. Mario is already burnt out on king cake, mostly the price these days. You can make your own. I've made my own plenty of times. Actually, made a couple last week for here at the office. They're not that expensive to make. They're certainly cheaper than buying one in the store. They just take a little longer and a little more effort, but I think they're more delicious that way. Katrina says, should my daughter that lives in Egan with no generator come to my house in Carless Sunday evening? I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea if you were concerned if she needs electricity, if she wouldn't be okay potentially without electricity for a little while, then yeah, I mean, that's always a precaution you can take. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's necessary. But you know, if you're concerned about power outages, then that is always an option. Yeah. Mario says Louisiana has 40-something salt domes in the state. What's the chances roads won't have salt? Well, that is way beyond my capability to answer. That would be the DOTD that would have that information. I'd imagine that they are prepared. You know, this was or has been on everybody's radar for several days now, and I know the state has been daily briefings, and you know, they seem to be pretty on the ball with preparations. So whether or not they actually dump salt is obviously going to be at their discretion, but they do have the materials available if needed. Christy says, my eyes are old and I can't see numbers that small. I'm sorry, Christy. I tried to make these as big as I can because it's a balancing act between making them large enough so everybody can see, but also making sure there's enough cities on there, because people get upset when I don't put their city on there. They want to see their particular city, and then they yell at me when I put too many cities on there. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation for me. So I have to try to find the best balance I can. Teresa asks, how many hours below freezing in Beaumont? Well, that's going to depend on what night, because we're going to be looking at several nights of long duration below freezing temperatures. But we're going to start Sunday night or Sunday evening, afternoon, I should say, until Monday. For the Beaumont area, you're looking at 17 consecutive hours below freezing, Sunday into Monday. And then Monday into Tuesday, 14 hours. And then Tuesday into Wednesday, we're probably not going to get below freezing in Beaumont at that point. But essentially from Sunday through about midday Wednesday, we're going to be looking at very close to a full day's worth of below freezing temperatures. So it's certainly going to be enough to cause pipe busting conditions. Back up here just a bit. Nikki says, did I miss anything? No, you didn't. It's fine. Sunny and 70. Glorious day. Nice weekend. I'm just kidding. But if you did miss anything, you can always rewind, and the briefing will be available as a recording just as soon as we finish up here. Stephanie says, if it's going to be that cold, I want to see snow or ice. I would rather see snow much more so than ice. Snow is fluffy and cute, and it can cause some problems on its own, but it's not nearly as dangerous as the ice. I would take the snow any day of the week. And you can eat snow. I know some people don't like that, but I make me a snowball every time it snows here, which is, last year and never. I did eat a lot of snow during the snow event last year, though. I just go outside and get a cup of it. Mario says tons of widowmakers. I think he's referring to the ice on the trees, potentially bringing down tree branches. Christy's surrounded by dead trees. Try to make sure neither you, your loved ones, or any of your property is underneath them, because branches may come down. Mario says fuel your vehicles up. That'll keep you warm and charge phones. That's very true. The only caveat to that is do not run vehicles in a garage. Because, again, carbon monoxide. So if you're going to sit in your vehicle to get warm or to charge your phone, make sure it's outside. Liz asks, is there a chance for the storm to move south? The general trend in terms of the potential for ice and freezing rain has been actually lifting somewhat to the north. I expect that trend is probably either we're gonna kind of stay where we're at, or that trend will continue. That's been the trend for probably the better part of the last 2.5 days. So I don't see any reason why that's going to change. So no, I don't expect some kind of dramatic shift where all of a sudden we're going to be talking about huge amounts of ice accumulation all the way to the coast. I just don't see that right now. Desiree asked, what are we expecting in Avoyelles Parish? For Avoyelles Parish, we are going to be looking at, there is a pretty high probability, let me go ahead and make this full screen again, of seeing some significant ice accumulation in Avoyelles Parish. So we're looking at roughly about a 50% chance of seeing some amount of ice accumulation. Depending on where you're at, the major population center, if you want to call it that, of Avoyelles Parish is there in Marksville. We're looking at about a 30% chance of at least 1/10 of an inch. And 1/10 of an inch is usually where we start to see impacts from ice. That's when we start to see road closures, we start to see power outages. And then you're going to be looking at about a 10 to 15% chance of more than 1/4 of an inch. At that point, you're looking at probably most roads closed. So the probability of really substantial impacts is fairly low. But there is a high probability that you're going to see at least some ice accumulation in Avoyelles Parish from this. In addition, we're also going to be looking at those very cold temperatures. So you're looking at 18 plus hours below freezing, starting right around noon or a little afternoon on Sunday and continuing through about noontime Monday. Monday into Tuesday, again, pretty much almost the entire period, 20 plus hours below freezing in Avoyelles Parish. So kind of keep that in mind. In addition to the potential for the ice is the extremely cold sub-freezing temperatures for the vast majority of the day. Okay. Keith asks, what's it looking like next weekend? There was actually a few computer models that were showing some potential for another round of winter weather next weekend. Now, I'm not ready to say anything about that yet. We're still... that's 10 days away. But there will be the potential for some precipitation going into next weekend. Beyond that, I don't want to get into any kind of real details with that. But it will be, at least Friday, it'll be a little bit warmer than we will have seen through much of this upcoming week. Trevor asked, can you show the time frame for potential ice accumulation again? There it is on your screen, I do believe. Let me get me out of the way if that's what you're looking for. So that's the timing, and that is kind of it's broken down into a 6-hour period of when we expect certain amounts of ice accumulation. So effectively, between late Saturday evening and about noontime on Sunday is when we're expecting the majority of the ice accumulation to occur, with the highest amounts, the highest rates occurring generally between about midnight and 6 a.m. Rick Ranson says, when will we know more about the conditions for next weekend? Probably this weekend or early next week. We do a 7-day forecast. That's how far out we feel like we can reliably offer a forecast, and next weekend's still kind of in the day 9 to 10 period. So by about maybe this Saturday or Sunday, we'll start to have a little bit of a better idea. But as we get into early next week, then we'll have a much better idea of what we're looking at as far as potential for next weekend. Brian says, what about Sunday? I'm considered an essential personnel and have to report to Fort Polk for work Sunday. Well, up that way, we are expecting ice to begin Saturday evening, so there is likely to be ice on the roads on Sunday. Whether they're enough to shut down the roads, I can't say with certainty, but there will be most likely some amount of freezing rain and ice on the roads Sunday morning. Adolson asked, when is the next update? We're not going to do another one this evening because I have another engagement I've got to do elsewhere out of the office. But we are going to have another one of these tomorrow morning. We'll plan to do it again at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. Della asks, is it possible the freezing rain occurs earlier in the day Saturday, or do you think it will be pretty much begin later in the evening? I know the model shifts sometime. A couple of days ago, there was thoughts that it may be earlier in the day, but now we're thinking that the freezing temperatures, the sub-freezing temperatures, aren't going to get into the area until sometime Saturday evening. So no, I don't expect right now, I don't expect any kind of freezing rain or ice accumulation to begin until probably around or shortly after sunset Saturday evening at the earliest. Elaine says, did I hear Donald say he was going to make us all king cake? No, that's not what I said. And you need to check your volume. That is not what I said. That would be a few king cakes for the presently 500 people watching. Christy says cold king cake is yuck. Cold king cake is better than no king cake. It's kind of like pizza. Cold pizza is better than no pizza. Elizabeth has a birthday party scheduled for Sunday at 1:30. Happy birthday to whoever's birthday it is in Sulphur. Should we reschedule it? Again, right now, the probability of seeing significant ice accumulation in Sulphur is very low. It's less than 20%. So, you have to make that decision for yourself. If it were my decision to make, I'd probably go ahead with it with those odds. So, it's much more likely that you're not going to have any problems. But continue to monitor the forecast. If those probabilities go up, then you can make a decision later on. But at least if it was my decision to make at this point, I would continue to go ahead with my plans. Cedric asks, is this 0.23 of ice or snow? This is 0.23 of ice. We're not expecting any snow with this event. So the storm totals you see here, or the storm totals you saw earlier, those are for ice. That's ice accumulation, not snow. Brett asks, is it true that there's another chance for snow the following weekend? So that'd be next weekend. I I don't know if I'd call it a chance at this point. There are some computer models that are showing it, but again, we're talking 9-10 days out, so I'm not putting any credence into that yet. Hannah says, so no ice as of now for Lake Charles. That's right. Well, the probabilities are very low. We're not officially forecasting any ice accumulation at the moment, and the probabilities of seeing ice in Lake Charles are about 20%. Nathan asks, how wide is the 190 corridor? I live about 2 miles south of it. Yeah, you'd be within that. It's just a general landmark that we try to use as a differentiation point. So really, when we talk about that, the I-10 or the I-190 corridor itself, we'd probably call it 5 miles either side of it. But, we usually try to refer to it as north or south thereof. It's not a perfect line. It's just meant as kind of a landmark to give people an idea of what area we're talking about. Christy says, it looks like Tyler County, as far as Texas goes, is the worst. Yep, that's probably right. Or northern parts of Jasper and Newton County as well. That whole area is about roughly at the same latitude, so we're expecting similar conditions to develop. Same for Vernon, Rapides, and Avoyelles parishes as well. And then as you go further north, those potential ice accumulation numbers get even higher. Hope asks if it's safe to travel by roadway from St. Mary to NOLA on Saturday. Yeah, generally speaking, I would say yes. G says, please stop covering up Morgan City. Oh, you don't like my beautiful face? I'm sorry. Here we go. I'll come over here. There. Now we're not covering up Morgan City. Brenda would love a king cake. Me too. Let's go get one. Look, I'll make a king cake, but I don't have enough for everybody, or you're going to get a slice that's small like they do in elementary schools where everybody gets like 6 grains of sugar. Cassie says, what about traveling from around Basile back to an hour south of San Antonio Saturday morning, being on the road from 7 p.m. to 1 p.m.? So I guess you mean like Friday night into Saturday morning, you should be fine. We're not expecting any kind of ice accumulation until Saturday night or Saturday evening. Robbie says, I'm out of paper towels. Should I go to Walmart or Kroger to buy them? Look, I'm not here to answer all the questions and the mysteries of the universe. I try to stick to weather. I'd say whatever's cheaper. Kim asks, how much accumulation for Jasper? Looking at generally between probably right about around 1/4 of an inch. Actually, the Jasper little number here is showing between 1/4 and 1/2 of an inch. It's probably going to be on the lower side of that. So we're going to be looking at up to about 1/4 of an inch, which is certainly enough to cause some significant power outages and road closures if that winds up verifying. Ashley says, when will the rain start Saturday for below I-10? The rain is going to actually start. Let me see if I can go back to my, here we go. There, this, no, that, yes, no, maybe. And this gives you the idea anyway. So essentially you can see we're going to be looking at some showers beginning Friday afternoon. And this is going to be ahead of the actual front itself. And you can see the precipitation chances continue to climb all the way through Friday night and through Saturday. Now, this is all going to be liquid. We're not going to be looking at ice potentially beginning until Saturday evening after about sunset, or maybe an hour or two before. South of I-10, though, we're not expecting an ice accumulation, so this is all going to remain liquid. But generally speaking, you can see we're looking at about 30 to 40% chance of rain Friday afternoon, increasing to about a 50 to 60% chance after midnight, and then we're looking at 80 to 90% chance during the day on Saturday. Lonnie says, will I be okay to drive from Morgan City to NOLA Airport early around 3 a.m.? That depends what day you're talking about. But regardless, I don't expect that we're going to see any ice in New Orleans or in Morgan City or anywhere in between. So you should be in good shape either way. Rebecca says, what's the expiration for sulfur Sunday morning? Maybe you mean expectation? Let's hope nobody expires in sulfur Sunday morning. But generally, we're not expecting ice accumulation in the sulfur area. It is going to be cold. We are going to be looking at a long duration freeze, but we're not expecting any kind of ice accumulation in the sulfur area. You see the probability of seeing ice accumulation in sulfur is roughly about 20 to 25%. So it's pretty low. And the chance of any appreciable ice accumulation is about 10% or less. Now, Leslie says, just remember to make sure outdoor animals have water that isn't frozen. That's a good idea. In fact, a better idea is to give them some kind of shelter as well, away from these extremely cold, especially the wind chill temperatures, because animals, dogs, cats, anything with skin is susceptible to those wind chills as well. Now, dogs and cats have the advantage of having that coat of fur that kind of blocks the wind a little bit. It holds that heat in. But they're still susceptible to a strong wind, resulting in them feeling a whole lot colder. So those single-digit wind chill values are going to be hard on them too. So if you can give them a garage, give them even if they're normally outside all the time, give them some kind of a shelter to at least get out of the wind. That would make a difference. Darren asks, is heavy rain less likely to stick on tree limbs and power lines than a light mist when temperatures are at 32? It's going to be about the same, because when we're talking about freezing rain, the raindrops themselves are super cool. So while the rain is still liquid, it is actually below 32 degrees. So as soon as it hits whatever it hits, whether it be a tree branch or the ground, it's going to splatter. And the reason that it's able to stay liquid at 32 degrees or below 32 degrees is because of the shape of the raindrop. Now, when that shape is disintegrated, when it hits something, then that liquid water freezes on contact. And it's going to do that regardless of whether it's a small drop or a large drop, or whether it's coming down light or heavy. It's going to be the same process is going to unfold. So it's not really going to make much of a difference. Now, a heavier rain is going to produce more ice accumulation faster, but a light mist is going to attach to a tree branch just as effectively as a larger, heavier drop. That's a good question. Kimberly says, do I believe that this will be something like back in 1998? I wasn't here in 1998, so I can't compare the two events. I really don't know too much about that event. I didn't get here till 2009. Tammy asked, what about driving from Houston to Lake Charles on Sunday? Most likely you're going to be fine. The probabilities of seeing significant amount of ice accumulation enough to close roads are pretty low, probably 10% or less. All right, so I've reached the bottom of my list here that I'm able to see, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the time being. Again, if you have a question that I missed for some reason, or you think of one while you're viewing this as a recording, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook. You can also send us a message on X or Instagram as well. You can also email me directly. My email is on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. It's donald.jones@noaa.gov, so NOAA.gov. You can also give us a call here at our office if you want to talk to someone in person. Area code 337-477-5285, and we'll be happy to answer your questions that way. Again, our next briefing is going to be tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. We're not going to do one this evening, but we will have another update for you tomorrow morning with the latest and greatest at that time. In the meantime, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. It's going to be a little cool out there, but I stepped outside a little while ago. It's not too bad. It's going to be kind of dark and dreary, but the rain should hold off. So if you have outdoor preparations to take care of, covering plants, whatever the case may be, I've got to go do that myself. Actually, I've got some citrus that's going to have a bad time this weekend if I don't go wrap them up. Then you'll have a day or so to get that done. We are going to be looking at some rain coming back tomorrow, though. So today would be the better of the days to get that done. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning, 11 a.m.